Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. Today we'll present another great program with our speaker, Randy Cole. But before that, I'd like to ask Pat Sheehan to come up and deliver a reflection, and then have Kathy Tate lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good afternoon. Today is an exciting day for Toledo Rotary Club because tonight, through the efforts of Rotary International and our local Rotary Club, 15-year-old Manuel Carriega from Guasave, Mexico, will be arriving in Toledo. Manuel is going to be a student at St. Francis de Sales High School, and we know Manuel is very excited about his coming year, and we're looking forward to the opportunities that Manuel is going to bring, not only to himself, but to St. Francis, our Toledo Club, and our community. So we're all really anxious to meet Manuel, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to do that sometime soon, so stay tuned. Let's pause for a moment of prayer. Dear God, thank you for this beautiful August day in Toledo and all its blessings. We thank you for bringing our visitor, Randy Cole, to us today. We pray that you provide vision and wisdom to Randy and his team as they strive to bring us travel efficiency and safety. Today we ask for your blessings on Manuel and his family. At this hour, Manuel's parents and sisters have already kissed him goodbye for his trip to the U.S. Please provide them comfort as they balance the sadness of their son and brother leaving with the excitement and joy they know will greet Manuel in Toledo. This hour, as Manuel awaits his connecting flight from Mexico City to Detroit, please provide him comfort as he too balances feelings of anxiety and excitement toward his upcoming adventure. We thank you for the many opportunities the coming year will bring for Manuel and the many contributions his presence will bring to our Toledo community. Bless our fellowship today, and bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies in your service. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pat and Kathy. As we begin today's meeting, I'd like to thank and acknowledge this month's sponsor, Spengler Nathanson, PLL. We do not have any visiting Rotarians today. If anyone has a guest they would like to introduce, please go to the floor mic, and so we can, with your guests, so we can see them and hear you clearly.
Good afternoon, everybody. President. I do have Mateo Williamson and Frank Ellis from the Ohio Development Services and Ohio Third Frontier, which is part of our program. They're help promoting today throughout the region a diversity inclusion internship program, which actually connects Ohio University students or Ohio residents with companies looking for an intern. And the state will pay up to 2/3 of that salary, up to $10,000. So if anyone's interested, let me know. We can provide some more information. They join us.
Welcome.
President Dick, I have Stacy Stoll here with Stroll, with the Carroll Insurance Group. She's a partner with that company. She is looking for an opportunity to be more part of the community, and that's why I suggested she come to the Toledo Rotary Lunch. So everyone give her a nice warm welcome.
Welcome. Nice to have you with us.
President Dick, I do not have anyone to introduce, but I do have someone to thank. And Mr. Sheehan neglected to mention during his prayer that he and his wife Elaine have graciously agreed to be the host for Manuel this year. So I think we owe a debt of gratitude to him and to Joe Sweeney for his role as the liaison. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And to you also. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome all guests. Now would be a great time to check into social media, let everyone know you're here at the Rotary Club of Toledo. And then it'd be a good time to turn your phones off so you can truly enjoy our program today. This past weekend, we had Jeep Fest, and it was a tremendously successful event, and a lot of people might not know that 2 Rotarians were very much responsible for that. So I want to recognize Kevin Mullen, who was the Director of Partnership Development, and Whitney Rothkar, who was the spokesperson for the Jeep event. If you'd please stand, and just another example of Rotarians doing great things in the community. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about foundation giving. One of my goals this year is to increase awareness of our foundation and the Rotary International Foundation. And I think it's important to explain occasionally a distinction between those two. A lot of us have been here a while, and most of us understand it who have been here for a while, but a lot of us are newer. And you hear, give to the foundation's doing this. You might not understand what we're talking about. So there'll be some slides the Walt's put together during my presentation. Some will match what I'm saying. Others will just give you other information. But there are 2 foundations we'd like to talk about. And the first one is the Rotary International Foundation, which consistently scores at the top of international charitable foundations in terms of financial health, accountability, and transparency. The Rotary International Foundation is truly one of the most highly regarded foundations in the world. The Rotary International Foundation focuses on the 6 areas of focus of Rotary: peace and conflict prevention and resolution, disease prevention and treatment, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, and economic and community development throughout the world. We all know about polio eradication. It's been the pet project of Rotary for many years. Billions of dollars have been contributed through the Rotary International Foundation for polio eradication, and billions of children have been vaccinated because of that. And I was informed by President-elect Tim Ryan that for the second week in a row, no new cases of polio in the world. The Rotary International Foundation also gives district grants for smaller projects to Rotary districts around the world, smaller scale projects, still with significant impact, and global grants for larger scale international projects with sustainable and measurable results. In the 2016-2017 Rotary year, the Rotary International Foundation contributed or made grants in excess of $221 million throughout the world. So it has a huge impact, and it has a great impact, and it is very accountable. Now, we encourage giving to the Rotary International Foundation, but we also give encouragement to give to our own Toledo Rotary Foundation. Through our detailed grant review process, our club foundation contributes over $200,000 annually to local 501c3 organizations that truly have a need for the money, don't have a lot of places they can go for the money, but have a tremendous impact on our community and those with distinct needs. Our foundation has also funded over $500,000 in transformational projects. And as you know, we are looking now in the process to identify additional transformational projects to fund in the near future. 100% giving to our foundations has always been a goal. It's never been achieved. But I ask, why not? Everybody in this room and every member of Rotary has a charitable bent and gives to many organizations they feel a particular kin to. Why not put the Toledo Rotary Foundation and the Rotary International Foundation at the top of that list? You get a lot of bang for your buck. They're both tremendously accountable organizations, efficient organizations, and you know by giving to our foundation, you're contributing directly to needs within the Toledo community. And if you give to the Rotary International Foundation, you're contributing globally, worldwide, to people in need who look to Rotary for that assistance. So if you're a regular contributor to the Rotary International Foundation and the Toledo Rotary Foundation, I thank you very much. And if you're not, please join us. You can't do better than giving through our foundations. And we make it very easy. You can go on our website, the Toledo Rotary website, and there are great instructions to how you can give through different programs right through the website. Or I know if you call the office and talk to Kathy or Emily, they're more than willing to help you. This is timely because our service committees are currently in the beginning of the first grant cycle. We have 3 grant cycles every Toledo Rotary year. And the service committees are vetting grant requests within the next couple of weeks. You are invited to go to any committee meeting, service committee meeting, any other committee meeting at any time, whether you're a member of that committee or not. That way you see how the process works, and you might just find something you're passionate about and want to join that committee. Committees are where things happen in Toledo Rotary. At this time, I'd like to invite Zach Isaac to the podium to introduce new member Ryan Whitman and to make a brief announcement.
Thank you, President Dick. Before I introduce Ryan, I want to give a plug for our first after-hours network event. It's this Thursday, at the H2O Cafe. For those who do not know where it is, it's at the lower level of the Imagination Station, and it's on the riverside. I'm going to advise you can bring your boat. Docks will be provided. We will have food there, cash bar, and we're asking all members that come to wear their Rotary pins so the members or the guests know. And President Dick is going to take a few minutes at this after hours to share with our guests what Rotary is all about, the mission projects we do, and all the service projects. So those of you that have brought guests the last several months, I guess we'd encourage you to bring them to this after hours and really network with them and let them hear from President Dick all the great things that Toledo Rotary is doing. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce a new member, Ryan Whitman. Ryan is a CPA and a tax principal at Raymond. In the Toledo office, he provides various tax compliance and consulting services, including technical research for federal and state tax planning. He collaborates with closely held businesses and their related entities to identify, analyze, and utilize opportunities to minimize tax burdens. Ryan is a member of Raymond's construction and real estate practices. He serves on the firm's state and local tax group, the tax reform group, and the tangible property regulations group. Ryan is a very first-class CPA. I've known him for over 20 years, and he's done my work for all those years. He's also a member of the AICPA, Ohio Society of CPAs, and is a member, currently vice president of the Northwest Ohio Construction Financial Management Association. Ryan also, in his spare time, serves on the Finance Council at Christ of King Church and coaches softball. Outside the office, Ryan's been married to his wife, Michelle, for over 14 years and has 3 daughters, 6, 8, and 10. He and his family enjoy sporting events, outdoor activities, and movies. Please welcome Ryan Whitman.
At this time, I'd like to invite Joe Sharp to the podium to introduce presenter Randy Cole.
Today is my pleasure to introduce Randy Cole. He is the Executive Director of the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission. Randy has served as the Executive Director of the Ohio Turnpike since December of 2014. He previously served for 4 years as Controlling Board President and Policy Advisor to the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. He currently serves on the Advisory Board of DriveOhio, which is focused on bringing advanced transportation technologies to Ohio, and serves on the Board of Directors of the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association. Randy earned a Bachelor of Science Degree from the University of Akron and completed graduate work at Ohio State University. Randy's topic today is how the Ohio Turnpike is a key component of DriveOhio for advanced autonomous vehicle research. Please welcome Randy.
Well, thank you, Joe. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to address you today. I hope you're not looking for a big technology speech. Joe left out that I'm a father of 5. So I spend a lot of time answering the question, why? Dad, why? Dad, why? The 4-year-olds still ask me why a lot. The bad news for you is that by the time my kids get to 6 or 7, they stop asking me why. But we're going to try to put context around why these changes are happening, the impacts to us, to citizens in our population, to our economy, all related to the coming changes related to connected and autonomous vehicles and other technology disruptions that are happening. So you ready? Let's cover about 150 years of human history and project forward over the next 50 years. So we'll cover 200 years in the next 20 minutes. How's that sound? Let's provide context. So, does anybody know the answer to this question? Traffic crashes. The leading cause of death for young people on our planet are traffic crashes. Does that provide a little context? Let's bring it home to the United States. Overdose deaths, we're all aware of that. About 40,000 of those 64,000 deaths are opioid related. Horrible problem in our society, needs attention, needs resources. Opioid deaths surpassed breast cancer as a cause of death in our society. Homicide, numbers way too big, but that is all forms of humans killing humans, guns, knives, poisoning, whatever else bad people do to other people. But only about 1/3 the number of deaths that happen because of motor vehicles in our country. The fastest growing form of traffic fatality, pedestrian deaths. Because now we not only have distracted drivers, we have distracted walkers. I just came back from Baltimore in a conference, and all over the city it said, eyes up. Also at the bus stops, because it's for pedestrians to make sure they're watching for oncoming traffic. That number's too big. All forms of violent crimes short of getting in a motor vehicle and hurting yourself, someone else, someone in another car. I hope that provides a little bit more context to the problem we're trying to solve. Self-driving technology isn't just a shiny new thing. It's not about having a better widget. It's about solving a world health problem. Our own Centers for Disease Control have part of their website dedicated to traffic crashes because even in Atlanta, at the Centers for Disease Control, they call it a global health problem. One of the top agenda items of the Rotary Foundation is polio eradication. In 1955, Jonas Salk, as we all know in this room, created the polio vaccine. Anyone know how many deaths there were in the United States from polio in 1955 when he created that vaccine? 1,000. I just showed you much larger numbers than that. I hope that provides context for the problem we're trying to solve and the potential benefit within our society for solving it. It's an expensive problem. $35 billion a year just in government spending, cleaning up after traffic crashes. On the Turnpike, it's $1 million a year. That's guardrail, medians, buildings, $1 million. And it's not just that money, it's the time. We could be spending that time improving the roads, sealing cracks, filling potholes, instead of cleaning up after crashes. $870 billion nationally. Now that's an all-in figure related to health care, the damage, lost time at work. That is a huge number, almost $1 trillion because of traffic crashes. We know the reason, all right? Vehicles have gotten safer. Trucks, cars, they've all gotten safer. But humans have not. Increasingly, those cell phones and other distractions are causing the problem. But believe me, computers don't text. They might send messages, but it doesn't affect what's happening on the road and the way the technology works. Not a new problem. This car is the 1886 Benz, a long time before they became Mercedes-Benz. 1886, Carl Benz created the first commercially produced. Now, the Model T became the first mass-produced, but this was the first commercially produced. He did driving demonstrations around Europe, trying to convince people to get on this new thing and to buy it. Unfortunately, that vehicle ended in a crash when, after a public demonstration, he ran it into a wall. So the very first car ended in the first car crash. We have not gotten better. I love this quote. Jack Welch helped transform NBC that has now gone through even more, NBC Universal, even through NBC, GE, huge transformation from an old military industrial complex company into something that worked on systems and new technology all over the world. If you don't like Jack Welch, let me show it to you another way. Our world is changing drastically. And I think it's as big as that change. Oops. So I was part of a study that the Ohio Chamber of Commerce just did, looking at all of the industry verticals, how our economy works in Ohio. And you see most of those on the left side of that screen, right? Many of you identify with one of those forms, parts of our economy, one of those sectors. But they are blending and changing in ways we've never seen into 4 pillars that are vital to the future of Ohio's economy, our world economy. But next-gen manufacturing, future health, smart infrastructure, where the Turnpike fits, and these technologies I'm talking about, but also data analytics. How many people have heard of blockchain? If you haven't, Google it. It is a coming disruption. I was in a 2-hour meeting with leaders from around Ohio over in Cleveland this morning about creating blockland and where the state and local governments are going to adopt blockchain technology. If you haven't heard about it yet, in 10 years, it will be as big a part of your life as the smartphone you now hold. And it's coming fast. I bring it up now because that's data analytics. But the articles I'm reading right now are how blockchain technology can help create the cybersecurity needs we need for connected and autonomous vehicles. 2 totally unrelated disciplines coming together to create the change that's happening. So if you didn't like the ARC example, and usually more people laugh at that, I think that the changes we're talking about, I hear people talking about the Internet of Things, which is a real thing that's happening. 20 billion devices connected on our planet by the year 2020, which is only a year and a half away. Connected and autonomous vehicles are one example of the Internet of Things, where you need sophisticated data analytics working with machinery to improve people's lives. I think the change that we have not seen on this planet since 1903, when Ohio's own Wright brothers took a flight on a beach, and the first Model T in 1908 rolled off the assembly line in Detroit. The changes we are going to see, the disruptions, have not been more since that time, right? Think of that. Prior to the airplane and the automobile, which happened in the same decade, right, 1903, 1908, humans only moved themselves, used the wind, or used animals, right? That was it. There was no mechanized travel. And then we took to the roads and took to the air. Think of the disruption that had to have across society. We have not had innovations in transportation really since that time, save for space travel, which is really just a very fast jet. Those were roads. So in 1903, there were no airports, right? The Wright brothers took off on a beach. No airports. Roads, there were almost no paved roads. And yet, when that Model T rolled off and the rest of the cars that followed, people were willing to take it, even though those were roads. But what government did, what communities did, is they leaned into the change. They supported infrastructure that supported the new technologies, right? We built roads. We built airports. Look at what happened. From 1908 to 1940, in 1908, the first airport opened in Maryland. By 1940, there were 600 airports. Can you imagine the coordination and the investment? Did you see, if we can go back to 1.4 million miles of paved roads over a 30-year span. We now have over 2.6 million miles of paved roads. But one of the reasons this slide is on here is in 1916, all freight and almost all people moved intercity or intercontinentally by the use of train. We stopped building train tracks. Yes, there's still a new rail spur here and there. There are intermodal places where intermodal transportation happens and new rail line has been built. But we abandoned it the same way they had abandoned the canals in the past. We built roads, we built airports. And what happened? People used them. There were no airline passengers in 1914. By 1960, 58 million people were taking a commercial airline every year. In 2017, that was 895 million passengers without a fatality, right? We had that horrible incident with the engine, and then we had that guy out in Seattle this past weekend. I don't think we should hold that one against the airline industry. And the same thing with cars. They built the roads, and people used them. Those two transportation-related technologies fundamentally transformed our economy. For the largest growth of wealth, the rise of the middle class, and increased quality of life for everyone around our country and around our world, right? It's nice to go out to the bucolic country setting, but none of us want 2 horses in a carriage taking us to the hospital, do they? Do we? We're on the verge of the same types of disruptions and advancements that improve the efficiency of transportation, reliability of transportation. It's important to the Turnpike because we were one of the nation's first superhighways. That's how I first got involved in this. It's because the Turnpike is the right place to do this type of testing and bring these technologies to bear. It will help us improve safety, efficiency on our roadway, reduce our costs, but it also gives us an opportunity to compete against other parts of the country where they're already doing this testing, and we'll talk more about that. But it's important. We have a lot of autonomy that ODOT and local roads don't because we are an independent commission. There are places where we can set our own policies and make sure these types of things happen. 160 miles of 3 lanes, both directions. So if we are testing, there's still plenty of throughput for other vehicles if we use a lane for a while for testing or for the eventual adoption of these. So I won't get into all of that. We are also blessed with 241 miles of fiber. So we can backhaul significant amounts of data that are used to help make these systems work. And believe it or not, when you talk to self-driving technology companies and the auto manufacturers, they like 6-inch pavement markings, especially when all 1,500 lane miles are restriped every year. LiDAR, cameras, sensors like seeing those lines. What we're really trying to do is start to operationalize the technology, though. Again, I don't want to get into LiDAR and radar and everything. But our people, I'll use 2 examples. In our radio room, our comm center, if you are involved in a crash or you see a dead deer or something, you call the 677 number or the highway patrol, it gets reported to our radio room, and we respond. Our people are very good, very attentive, but all they do is react to something that's already happened. We need that same staff to start to monitor systems and analyze data. So we're putting sensors on the roadway. We're putting onboard units to connect our vehicles to our roadway so that they can monitor what's happening with those vehicles. So in quick terms, once there are more connected vehicles, right now it is the Cadillac using GM Super Cruise. We are aware of their activities on the Turnpike. There are about 8 other companies that are currently doing connected vehicle technology. But we need to start to see if one of those cars is sliding, has an anti-traction warning go off. Isn't it better for us to see that and dispatch a snowplow before there's a crash than to have somebody not think to call us because there's some black ice, but we'll respond once there has been a crash, right? It's about getting proactive instead of reactive, monitoring systems, analyzing data, taking better action. I hope that makes sense to everybody. $11 million a year we spend on snow and ice control on the Turnpike. If we can make sure we're only treating bridges, if the bridges are the only thing that are frozen, we make sure equipment's working properly. Anybody ever go past, this doesn't happen on the Turnpike, but you ever go behind a snowplow and you're not quite sure the salt's just spraying out the back but the road's dry, right? I mean, we pre-treat, but there are equipment problems. We now will know where the salt is being spread at what rate all through the winter in all of those vehicles. We can save a lot of money, protect the environment, be much more efficient in our operations. So we're trying to get the value out of these new technologies today. We're doing it collaboratively. This past year, Governor Kasich signed an executive order to create DriveOhio. In an unparalleled effort, for the first time, 9 state agencies are meeting together. The directors, the technology staff, the lawyers. You look across public safety, the Turnpike, even the Adjutant General helping to work on cybersecurity, the Department of Insurance. We're all facing disruptions because of these coming connected and autonomous vehicles. We're trying to align the state for 2 reasons. One, to make sure we are open to business for people who are bringing these technologies to market, but also to make sure we can take advantage of them and not act like bureaucracies and not have silos. Instead, it's one-stop shopping through DriveOhio. We have an expert advisory board as well as a local government advisory board to make sure this isn't just a state-driven effort, but instead a collaborative effort across all of Ohio. It's never been done like that before. We're also working across state lines. I gave you my OH, but we're working with the state up north. I know that's not as big a deal here in Toledo. But we're working across 3 states. When you align those 3 states, we have thousands of miles of road and as much economic production as the state of California. We become an economic powerhouse when working together. Not to mention, again, truck platooning, self-driving vehicles. The people who are bringing those things to market are paying attention that innovation doesn't have to start or stop at a state line. They love the fact and come to our meetings with the Smart Belt Coalition to see how 3 states are working on this. The Federal Highway Administration is watching our effort because this is a better way to plan these things out. We are each working on some of our own pieces of the puzzle, our own projects, to try to make sure the Midwest is positioned to help take advantage of these technologies. Has everyone heard of Zipcar, Uber, or Lyft? Zipcar is a ride-sharing service. Again, in Baltimore, Zipcar is all over the place. Zipcar now has 1 million accounts, 10,000 vehicles in operation in 500 cities in our country. Ride-sharing, or using that little bit of a car, is a growing trend. Lyft is now up to 1 million rides a day. And they're the little guy, right? The big one's Uber. 6.5 billion trips now. The market capitalization of Uber is larger than General Motors. Think about that. It's not been around that long. People are changing the way they think about getting from point A to point B. I like to say thanks Uber because a big part of this is going to be the cultural part of it, the societal change. And Uber, Lyft, and Zipcar are changing people's ideas about having to own a car and whether or not they have to steer to go someplace. That's an important dynamic. AAA and Waze. Waze is spelled W-A-Z-E. Waze was created in 2009 in Israel. If you haven't used it, it's a drive. It's an app for free that helps get you from point A to point B. It tells you where all the construction is, speed limits, traffic backups, debris on the side of the road. AAA members? I'm a AAA member. My grandpa was. I've had my card 25 years. There are 50 million AAA members in the United States. There are 65 million active Waze accounts. The Turnpike is now a Waze community partner because we can get more information to more drivers on our road, hopefully passengers, on our road about what's happening, crashes up ahead, our construction, than we can in any other form of communication we've got. Download Waze, it's free. Again, I still pay for my AAA membership, but boy, I sure do like my Waze. All right, Randy, this is all nice, but you're still kind of losing us. People don't really want this technology, right? The survey on the left, J.D. Power, 80% of people responding to a survey said they're not comfortable with the technology. Last year, AAA did it, 63% still said no. There are 213 million licensed drivers in the U.S. I've asked the people doing these surveys 2 questions. Are you surveying the right people, and are you asking the right questions? I say, are you surveying the right people? Because the headline said Americans believe, but when I read the survey details, you only talk to drivers. Well, of course, Randy, we only talk to drivers. Who else would we talk to? I said, well, and then those drivers, what are you asking them? I said, are you asking them, is it okay if Detroit takes the steering wheel away from you? Because anyone I've ever been known to ask a question in a survey that's negative or you're losing something, they almost always say no to that, right? So I said, what about some of these people? Blind adults. 7.3 million blind adults in our country can't drive. The National Federation for the Blind is one of the leading funders of assisted driving technology and self-driving technology. Steve Mahan was the first quote-unquote driver in the Google car, a blind man. Aging drivers, the coming silver tsunami. No offense to any of my baby boomer friends in the audience, but that market is going to grow from 55 million people to 75 million people over the next 10 years. People tell me all the time, older drivers are not going to like this. But yet there's a company called Voyage that's already operating in 2 senior living communities, one in California, one in Florida. There's an 88-year-old woman, Nancy Green, out in California. I loved reading the article about her experience. She said she likes to stay active in things, but if she can't get that handicapped parking spot, it's too much. So she won't go to bingo. She won't go down to the store. She'll wait till she can get a handicapped parking spot. The self-driving shuttle now picks her up door to door, and she's much more active than she used to be. In our home, our family, my grandfather passed away 2 years ago at 99. At 96, right, World War II vet, greatest generation. At 96, my dad, my aunt, my uncle took the keys away from Grandpa. He was still driving. Wasn't really driving safe, that's why they had to intervene. But I would ask you this, and I would say this about him. From 96 to 99, he ended up with dementia, in assisted living, isolated from community, I think in large part because he didn't feel like he was a part of it anymore. If when they took those keys away from Grandpa, his grandson was there to show him an app that was going to allow him to dial up a car service, even if it was self-driving, Grandpa would have still gone to the grocery store. He still would have gone to his doctor's visits. He wouldn't have needed mobile meals. We have a path we can take to start to take advantage of what these opportunities have, and there may be very large audiences in our population very willing to take that step. I want to make sure that stuff's in place before I have to take the keys away from my parents. At the top, you see, move up from aging drivers. That's my daughter, Eden, and I. She's 10 now, going to be starting 5th grade on Friday. Just completed the 4th grade basketball team last year. At age 3.5, she was diagnosed with a genetic condition called Williams syndrome. It's considered a rare disease, only 1 in 8,000 births. But she is in a fully integrated classroom. She does all of the other activities with everybody. But my wife and I went to a National Williams Syndrome conference 2 years ago, and a speaker, Paul Doherty, a sports writer from Cincinnati, had just written a book about his daughter with Down syndrome called written a book about his daughter. She's now in her 20s. She's married. She has a job, but she has to take public transportation back and forth. What would be a 15-minute drive for someone with a car is a 45-minute commute for her, and she sits in a bus stop not knowing if the bus is coming. This is not against public transit. I've been working with public transit officials across Ohio and across the country. Increasingly, they are partnering with Uber and Lyft. They want to solve first mile, last mile problems. I think we can put more people on buses and trains than we ever had before if we can use the self-driving technology and ride sharing to solve some of those challenges and save an awful lot of money. But anyway, Paul was talking about that and his concerns over having a daughter, even with all of her capabilities, sitting in a bus stop waiting for a bus she doesn't know when it's going to come, not to mention being out there exposed for an hour and a half a day. He said, but that's not the hard part. All of you parents working on all that inclusion with your special needs children, when they turn 15 and a half, they're going to come home and their friends are going to get their temporary driving permits. And after spending your entire life telling them how they are like everyone else and can do what everyone else wants to, for the sole purpose of the way the technology we use for independent mobility, driving a car, you're going to break all of that down and tell them, you are not like everyone else, and you will not have a life like everyone else. I think we can change that. And maybe everybody can just have a government-issued ID, and we can keep them integrated. There's a foundation in Boston called the Ruderman Family Foundation that estimates 2 million additional job opportunities for disabled people in our society if we could solve that independent mobility issue. Companies like Uber or Lyft, like I said, are working with transit authorities to try to make some of those changes. So the last audience that's in there, the economically disadvantaged. 45 million people live at or below the poverty line. AAA estimates it costs about $8,500 a year to own a car. That's insurance, car payments, gasoline, parking, maintenance, right? $8,500. If the poverty line is $24,000 a year, how does anyone living at or below the poverty line afford a car like that? We can't. But ride sharing and other things can make that change. There's a fundamental misperception that you have to own a Tesla, right? $85,000 to be able to take care of self-driving technology. That's not the disruption that's happening. It is partnering with transit. It is using ride sharing and not just everyone owning their own car. All right, so let's start wrapping this up. The net impact of all of this, especially with the economically disadvantaged, but I would say elderly, blind, disabled, is isolation. This slide was first shown to me in northern Kentucky, and I was disappointed to hear a global expert showing a slide from northern Ohio. The 64 is the lifespan of an average adult male in the east side of Cleveland called the Huff neighborhood. There were riots there in the 60s. 8 miles away is a suburb of Cleveland called Lyndhurst. The average life expectancy of an adult male there is 88 years. 8 miles in Ohio, not in a third world country, a life expectancy difference of 24 years. This is a study done by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. They said the reason, lack of access in the Huff neighborhood to health care, grocery stores, education, recreation, things that are called food deserts because of the lack of grocery stores. The Federal Highway Administration believes that 70% of our household trips are 2 miles or less, right? That's what we jump in our cars. Anybody in their car right now? No. It's in a parking lot. The same way it's in your driveway or your garage tonight. We don't use these things very much, and most of our trips are very short trips. Self-driving technology and ride sharing in partnership with public transportation can solve that isolation problem and free up opportunities for people to live better and live longer. All right. So, again, big initiative by Governor Kasich to get DriveOhio off the ground. It is important to Ohio. It's important to the Midwest. Safety. The Turnpike's slogan is, we're a better way to travel. People say, are you going to make money off of all this testing? No, I just want to show that it works. So that FedEx and UPS, if they want to do truck platooning, are bringing their trucks onto our road. So that people in their Cadillacs are driving on the Turnpike because they know the technology works on the Turnpike instead of maybe a different road. We are a better way of travel. This helps prove that. It is important for our economic future as a state. And I hope I've shown you today an improved quality of life for a lot of people in our society. So let's bring that home. I just turned 50 this past year. 1967, I was born. In 1970, Ohio had 24 members of Congress. 24. 52% of the U.S. population lived in the Midwest and the North Atlantic. 2010, we were now only 40% of the population. 60% live in sunny, nice places. We are going to go from 16 members of Congress after the 2020 census, it's predicted, to 15 members of Congress. All of that voting clout, the political power, has gone to other parts of the country. The reason I bring this up is if, again, you're skeptical and you say, well, Randy, that's nice where it's sunny, but it snows here, it rains here, we have ice on the roads. The car companies, the technology companies want to solve those challenges, and we'd better be open for business, because if they can take products to market for 60% of the country's population, you can bet they're going to stay in California, Texas, Arizona, Florida, and other places. They'll take it to market. The impact, the problem is we still make things. You just had the Jeep Festival, right? We still make things here. We still grow things. We've got to get those goods to market. If it is more efficient through truck platooning, if there are less crashes, there are some estimates that car insurance in the near term will go down 60 to 70% when self-driving or advanced driving technologies are part of vehicles. All of those savings are going to go other places, and we will continue to see that kind of economic challenge we've had We can't let that happen. So again, back to the skeptics. 100 years ago, little over 100 years ago, we walked, and the only way we could get passage any place, there were trains, right? But then we got cars and automobiles, and it changed the world forever. That effort was led by 2 bicycle mechanics in Dayton and a great entrepreneur in Detroit, and then other people who followed them. Right now, every academic institution in our country, every state, every major corporation are trying to bring these disruptions to the market and improve quality of life and make an economic impact across the world, 6 of the 7 continents. Tremendous disruptions. I say 6 of the 7 because I think there's great use for drones and self-driving vehicles in Antarctica, but nobody set up shop there to build them yet. But the rest of the world is going after this prize. All right. Maybe this isn't the right audience for it, so I'll go back to that philosopher, Marty McFly. That is, my kids and I in front of a DeLorean at the Cleveland History Connection, which helped inspire me looking at the rate of change. Does anybody, so some of you are on social media, right? Can follow me at O Turnpike Guy, OH Turnpike Guy, although my wife just says O Turnpike Guy. But follow me. Chuck Yeager, another quick story to end about the pace of this change. I don't have a crystal ball. I am not going to tell you when all of these technologies are happening. But as sure as that flight on the beach and the Model T rolling off the assembly line changed our world, we're going through a change that big again. Chuck Yeager and Orville Wright are on Twitter together. Well, Chuck tells the story. Orville Wright's dead. But on Twitter, they've linked the accounts because Chuck Yeager, everybody remember Chuck Yeager? What did he do? Broke the sound barrier in a test plane in 1947. 40 years after the flight on the beach, they broke the sound barrier. Think how fast that technology came forward. But he likes telling the story on Twitter of meeting Orville Wright. So the first guy to fly met the guy who broke the sound barrier, and they became friends. Think of that pace of change. And now we have the whole world trying to make these changes happen. Fantastic times. I've got a couple minutes for questions, if you have any. I hope you got something out of this, and we provided a little bit of context to just what we're living through and the opportunities that it presents us. I hope Toledo and the Rotary are excited about embracing that change and being a part of it, because it could do great things for your region and for our state and for our families. Thank you. So you guys already know this, but they asked me to say, please go up to the microphone so that we can capture your question properly.
Great presentation.
Thank
What
you.
is the reality of Hyperloop, and what is its impact on DriveOhio?
Okay, Hyperloop. How many people are aware of Hyperloop? All right. I am going to be in a Hyperloop meeting again this week. I am on the advisory committee overseeing the Hyperloop feasibility study for the route from Chicago to Cleveland, or Cleveland to Chicago, depending on which city you're talking in. That feasibility study will be done in the next 18 months. Consultants are already hired. They are going to look very carefully at the business model, the construction opportunities, the costs, the ridership demand. When I was first contacted about Hyperloop, my first reaction was, okay, I don't know how much time I want to spend on this. But I was reading some research after I got off a small commuter plane in Washington, D.C., and I thought, who's going to travel in small tubes at hundreds of miles an hour in between cities? And then I realized that the 14-foot tube for Hyperloop is much bigger than most of the small puddle jumpers I end up on in my travels. It's a very real technology. The first lines are in operation in other parts of the world, over in Dubai. There are test tracks now in the U.S. and in France that are in operation. There are 10 approved routes. There are 4 separate companies. The company we're working with is called HTT, which is Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, which is different than Hyperloop One. but an awful lot of planning, an awful lot of smart people are working to bring this technology to the market. The reason as Turnpike Director I'm involved, the route of the Turnpike, either near us or through our right-of-way, is one of the potential routes to get from Cleveland to Chicago. We want to be at the table. I went to my first meeting about Hyperloop, and I laughed. I said, oh my gosh, again, I like history. And I thought back, we have 5 kids. We like to get outside a lot. We like to go hiking. One of our favorite parks in Summit County, just north of Akron, is called Deep Block Quarry Park. And it's no longer an active quarry, but you can see where they had mined the stone and everything. It runs along the Ohio and Erie Canal. If you've ever been to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park or in through there, you know we have a 110-mile now towpath trail for hiking and bikes and things. Well, it runs along where the old Ohio and Erie Canal was. The Great Flood of 1913 destroyed the Ohio and Erie Canal. So think of that. Again, just 100 years ago, the primary way to move people and goods between Cleveland and Akron and throughout all of northern Ohio was the Ohio and Erie Canal. It helped lead to our economic development. It was destroyed 100 years ago. They built a rail spur and a rail line to get quarried rock down to the canal to rebuild it. And I laughed because I thought, okay, now Turnpike Director, they're talking about using part of our road or our right-of-way for this Hyperloop thing. Somewhere there's a contract where somebody who worked for the canal hired the people to build the rail spur that replaced them, right? They used the railroad until the interstate replaced it. They never rebuilt that canal. Again, we are living in tremendous disruptive times. And I think Hyperloop technology is something real, and having an access point to it is going to be just like the early 1900s when 600 cities wanted airports in this country. You're going to want to be a part of it, whether that's near term or long term. And I think Toledo at some point will be a part of it. We are investigating a Toledo location as part of the route. We're also looking at other routes that don't use the Turnpike and or wouldn't include Toledo. But I think we will see it happen. The efficiencies of how they travel and the potential safety related to it is pretty magnificent. If you think about it, it's not really a competition with rail or highway the way we think of it. When you're traveling 600, 700 miles an hour, it is much more like a regional air stop or taking a flight from Cleveland to Chicago. And that's part of the economic model we're looking at is what's happening with freight and passenger traffic between those two cities using the forms of transportation today. Pretty amazing stuff.
Could you comment briefly on the state up north? As soon as you get on 75, you almost have to drive in the far left lane, otherwise you're going bump, 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 bump. How are they competing? I mean, we're close to them with Ohio.
In some ways, we compete for federal dollars, for projects, for the attention of the manufacturers to bring the products to bear, but more than that, we're collaborating. I'm personal friends with Kirk Steidel, the Secretary of Transportation in Michigan. We share notes. Both states are part of a connected vehicle effort that involves 21 states trying to keep the heat on the feds to bring that technology to bear to help improve safety. So it's the Coalition for Safety Sooner. We sign those letters together. We participate in everything we can to help keep heat on the feds to help bring that technology to bear. So there's some level of collaboration and there's some level of competition. But we are all trying to do it because, again, the bigger thing for us is the greater Midwest, and we think Ohio is well positioned to lead in that, but having some fellow travelers is a good thing. Last question?
That'll be it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Randy. It was a very informative program. And to show our appreciation, the Toledo Rotary Foundation is going to make a contribution in your name to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. And we also want to present you with this book on Toledo history.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Please join us next week when our speaker will be our District Governor, Maris Brenner. There are no meetings after today's meeting, but a reminder to check on our website calendar for upcoming meetings. And especially if you're a new member, I invite you to stop in any meeting, again, to get a feel for Rotary and see if you want to be part of that committee. And there he is, our own Chuck Mann, to close us out.
Alfred Hitchcock was born on this date in 1899. He was one of the most influential directors of all time. Nicknamed the Master of Suspense, he pioneered the psychological thriller genre with films like Rear Window, North by Northwest, The Birds, and Psycho. He was also a master of inspiration with his witty and insightful statements. On his birthday, we'd like to bring you 5 of the best Alfred Hitchcock quotes. There is no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it. The length of a film should be directly related to the endurance of the human bladder. I have a perfect cure for a sore throat. Cut it. The paperback is very interesting, but I find it will never replace the hardcover book. It makes a very poor doorstop. And I never said actors are cattle. What I said was all actors should be treated like cattle.
Thank you, Chuck. Again, Ryan, welcome to Rotary. Zach, thank you for bringing Ryan in. That's it for today. Remember to be servants out there and be the inspiration. We're adjourned. Go ahead, Kathy. Sorry.
No, it's okay.